There was like 130 people at the company. They fired 70 of them right off the bat.
Was there a theme that you guys were both noticing in terms of like a resistance that you were feeling in your journey as an entrepreneur? How are you able to make sure you're giving that same level back to your co-founder?
It's not easy. It's not straightforward. You're going to get a lot of no's. Obviously, everyone knows this. Everyone's going to be like, no, not here, go away.
Wealth doesn't last for many generations.
They were literally redlining what they told me to put in the contract. And we're about 8 months in this, and I blew up.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, everybody. We're here in New York City. A little bit of a change of scenery from Dallas, Texas, but we're here for Habibi Tech with our first official guest, Hakim Isa from Rollfi. How's it going?
Walaikum salam. It's going well, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. We're excited to kind of get to know you and your home base here in New York and see what you're building and hear more about your journey. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. You feeling good?
Yeah.
You mentioned it was your first episode, but hopefully we can, roll you into it pretty easily. So what we kind of want to know is, because you have a pretty interesting background, like working in financial technology spaces is something that, to me at least, working in tech and coming from a computer science background, was always this space of technology that seems quite guarded. Like you need this like proper pedigree of, having a technical background or a finance, big banking background to really make not even an impact, but just to be a participant in the space. And we know, at least going through LinkedIn, it seems like you did not start the traditional way. So I'd kind of love to hear about what got you started going into college, why the path you chose, and why that was the case.
Yeah. Basically, come from an immigrant family, so your parents are like, hey, go get a college degree, and they want you to be like a lawyer, doctor, something that you can actually use your degree for, right, directly. And I remember I was going through university, my second year there. I actually ran into my co-founder.
As a
sophomore in college, yeah. Wow. And we immediately just like hit it off. Like he liked cars, I liked cars, and then we just started speaking. One thing led to another, and we realized that, hey, this guy likes to like build and make stuff, right? We didn't start building. We made T-shirts, right? So our school actually won its first like national championship. I don't claim it because it's not a real one. It's just like a self-proclaimed national championship. But
in like football?
Yeah, in football, yep.
Oh, wow. So
we're University of Central Florida.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. And then you mentioned you're an immigrant family. Well, what's your background?
Yeah, so I'm Albanian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
amazing. And then are you first generation? Like, were you born here? Or did you?
I was born here, yeah.
Okay, so you're really
over,
taking it the helm of the responsibility. Now, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, so I have two older brothers. One's about 10 years older. The other one's about 8 years older. And then I have one younger sister about 2 years younger than me.
So you guys are a full house. Just maybe you have a cooler intro than Full House itself. That might be a good time to add some B-roll of Full House going by. But so you're going into college, you meet your co-founder you mentioned, but what did you decide to study going into university, especially as like a first generation family?
Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be a doctor because I wasn't the biggest fan of school.
Yeah.
I love learning, but I didn't like school. And I was always in sports, like playing soccer, basketball, football. So I found sports and exercise science like really interesting. And I was like, hey, maybe I could do PT. So I started going down that path. And then obviously I met my co-founder while I was doing that. And he was going for, I believe, a CS degree at the time.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure which one it was. And like I said, we started speaking. We're like, hey, I like this guy. He's cool. Let's do something. University, our school football team won. And we're like, hey, this is an opportunity. Let's make T-shirts. So we actually contacted a vendor overseas, got samples made, shipped it, designed the T-shirt. We started selling it.
And when was this? Like 2017?
2000, I think 16 it was.
16. Okay, wow. And so you mentioned you're kind of more in the biology health space at this point while your friend is more on the technical engineering side. How did you guys bump into each other in college? Because they're kind of separate realms.
Funny enough, I took the wrong statistics class.
Man, what's written is written.
It's one of them, man. Honestly, it's so insane because I was supposed to take like a different type of statistics class. I didn't know that, and I just winged it, man. Through I was just like, whatever, just sign up. And then as I got in there, my counselor was like, "You're in the wrong stats class," and I was like, "No way."
It's probably more difficult if you were in the computer science one.
Yeah, no, way more difficult. Funny enough, it wasn't the computer science. It was like the super basic level, but they're like, since if you want to go get like your PT, you have to get like a certain certain stats one. Yeah, and I didn't know that, but we actually, like I said, bumped into each other in there, and then it wasn't even, it was just he was a freshman. I was a sophomore, so it was like it's one of his first few classes that he took, and just completely random.
And where did you guys find like your foundation in your friendship? Cars was the kind of connecting point.
That was it. Cars.
And how did that come about? Were you guys just like talking about, because like I've being an engineering background, being computer science, right? And you seem a bit more extroverted in terms of communication. I think there's this notion of people in engineering aren't like that by majority. Was your co-founder kind of fitting into that stereotype or into that mold, or was he also different in that sense too?
Very different.
Very different.
Yeah, he's not even an engineer.
Oh.
Right now, fast forward today. No, he's very outgoing, extrovert, super talkative. I mean, I think it was our phone case. Someone had a car on the wallpaper, and we're like, "Oh, you like Ferrari?" He's like, "Yeah," And then the conversation started flowing. Follow each other on Twitter, hang out, play basketball together. And then we really started to see that drive, like, okay, this person wants to do something. Let's go ahead and, try it out. We're young, we're in college. Why not just do something? So we did like T-shirts. Then we went into like digital marketing, built websites. I think at one point we tried to sell like vending machines and like lease them out in like, hotels.
So you guys were just kind of experimenting and just hacking things together to see like what sticks on the wall, what lessons you're learning. What was... I guess in those lessons that you learned, is there a common theme that you gained from all of them in terms of, when you try all these business ventures? Because I think a lot of these we see, at least on Instagram, on TikTok now, right? Like start a vending machine company or power washing, whatever it may be. Was there a theme that you guys were both noticing in terms of like a resistance that you were feeling in your journey as an entrepreneur?
It's not easy. It's not straightforward. You're going to get a lot of no's. Obviously, everyone knows this. Everyone's going to be like, no, not here, go away. Honestly, the biggest reason we did any of it wasn't like, hey, I want to make some money so I can go, hang out. It was more of I wanted to understand how operating works, how I work with this guy, right? Like, do we work well together? Are we fighting over pointless things, right? So understanding kind of that relationship. I think, honestly, that was the biggest thing that we really got from all that experience was like, right now we will straight up argue with each other, right? And people around us will be like, whoa, calm down. And we're like, we look at them like, dude, back off. Like, we're just talking,
Yeah,
They're like,
this is a factual based discussion to see who can get closer to the truth.
Yeah.
But that's the way it works, right? Like, I feel like if you have a lot of experiences, I mean, like, I always say this, like, if you have someone who's a co-founder, it's very closely related to like marriage, to be quite honest, like in terms of how intimate they need to understand your mind and how intimate you need to understand theirs, because you need to have that kind of unequivocal faith and trust with them. But it takes time, right? It's not just like something you just build up immediately. So if you have like some friendship that as an underlying basis, that helps. And then if you have some experiences of like some mini versions of trials and tribulations, and I think it increases the probability of success. I think that's even the case with us a little bit. Like I mean, I know we started in some professional capacity in like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, but like over time, like we actually were just way closer friends, and then that would kind of spawned into a couple of things. So I think that's like it's like a good blueprint. Even though people say don't go into like business with your friends or family, I kind of disagree with that notion. What do you guys think about that?
It's tricky. It all depends. The way I see it is the person you're working with greedy?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do they argue over pointless, issues? So if the answer is no, obviously I'm making it super basic, but if the answer is no, you're like, hey, we really care to build a good business. there's trust here, and I'm not worried about you trying to get one over me, like Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like, it was funny when we first, kind of fast forward a little bit, not to screw the
no, you're good.
The cadence, but when we first were signing our docs, when we started Rollfi, I remember everyone was telling me, like, get a lawyer to review, and ChatGPT wasn't a thing that wasn't big at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I don't want to pay a lawyer to review it. I'll just read it. Obviously, you should read it. But at the end of the day, I told them, I said, if I feel the need to really scrutinize this doc that this person's handing me, I'm not going to work with them. If I can't close my eyes, and if I don't believe that you can hand me a paper, I can close my eyes and sign it, I'm not going to work with you. Because why? Why am I going to live with that stress? Oh, is this guy going to do this? What's he planning behind my back? And you see it, all these startups that we met. You see co-founders constantly doing things behind the other one's back. You know?
Interesting things for sure.
Now, was your co-founder, is he also Muslim?
He's not, actually.
He's not.
No.
How did you go about, when it comes to finding a co-founder, right? I think that's oftentimes a challenge for a lot of us, even if you're not Muslim. How do you guys go navigating about different values, such as, your ethical values as a Muslim, things you can do businesses or can't do business in? How did those conversations go, or how do you go about having those conversations, especially when you live in a place like America where it is a very high likelihood that you may have a co-founder that's not Muslim? How do you, take on that seat of having that difficult or necessary conversation?
I'm laughing because we still have this conversation till this day. Obviously, we're in fintech, and some of what you can utilize from our business, one of the levers is making money off interest, which is a lot of what the fintech companies do. We don't. Probably should cut that out, but and so it's this very interesting conversation that I constantly have with him, where he kind of goes to me. He's like, hey, he'll poke me because he knows it bothers me, and I tell him, I said, hey, look, we don't do it currently. I voiced my opinion. I've been outruled. I don't know what you want me to do here. And I've kind of just been pushing it down the line a little bit. But since we've been acquired, I've been so detached from that part of the, that immediate
sphere.
connection. Yeah, to that. Because I don't want to touch it. And it's a constant struggle I have with myself as well. Right? Because am I lying to myself saying, oh, I'm far enough removed from it? Am I not? So he pokes me with it, and he cracks up because he knows what he's doing, and he knows how much it it eats me alive. But yeah, I mean, when we talked about what we were going to build, at least initially, there was no riba involved, right? We were doing payroll, right? So it was a simple. This guy needs this
A
business.
to B.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it, right? And then we started to learn some levers in the business, and unfortunately, the way the entire financial system works here is interest, debt, leverage, right? And so it's tough to navigate. It's really tough to navigate. And you're at a disadvantage here if you don't utilize those tools, right? So when you're getting started, you have to be prepared to say, hey, I'm going to do it, or for the sake of Allah, I'm not going to do it, and just... do what's halal,
I think that's very difficult. I think you kind of really painted a scenario that is very much of a prophecy, right? Prophet Muhammad SAW talks about how there will come a time where avoiding debt or interest rather is as if you're trying to avoid sand in a desert, in a sandstorm, right? You just can't traverse it. And I think in those moments, what do we do as Muslims in this situation? And I'm no scholar, but it is something to, I can understand why it eats you alive, because it's something that even for many Muslims, even in their personal finances, even not being part of the industry, will be a home mortgage and all these things. And solutions may or may not exist, depending on whatever debate. But I think it is, it's definitely a problem for a lot of Muslims, period, whether it be working in it or being a participant of it. And I guess that's where values are really, really important. And I think sometimes what I'm really thankful for, at least, working with Hamza and so many of the other Muslim founders that we've spoken with, is what you kind of mentioned is like, can they put a sheet of paper in front of me and I can be blindfolded, have no sensory, but I know I can sign it with confidence. And just when you were saying that, it reminded me of a time where there's like a hadith that talks about Muslims wanting the best for their brother or for their sister more than their own selves, right? Putting that individual's interests above yours. And I think that's something we should all really strive for, and grounding ourselves in that as the principle, and not so much how can I deepen my own pockets. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to having that mindset, how do you try to have that? Because as much as we like to receive, the best ideal situation, how are you able to make sure you're giving that same level back to your co-founder? Is that something that was like naturally ingrained to you growing up, or is that something you had to be very conscious of to do?
My whole theology is, let's keep the main goal, right? And that means, I've mentioned this before, but don't argue over small stuff. Be fair in how you deal with everybody, right? Like it's in the Quran, you deal with everyone in a fair manner, right? And how you deal with people is what's going to happen to you, right? So if you treat people well, you treat people with respect, you deal with them kindly, yeah, you're going to get the bad characters here or there. But overall, it'll work out in the end, right? Like you just have to do it for the sake of Allah. The intention is the important part, right? So if I'm just doing this because I'm like, hey, I can help this guy, and then he can, introduce me to so-and-so, and I can do this. Look, it may work, right? But there's no benefit, there's no value to it. If I say, hey, I want to help this guy, for the sake of Allah, this is what I'm required to do, this is how I'm supposed to act, you'll be rewarded for it. Maybe not immediately, but you will be.
I think that's a really solid mindset to have, is where you kind of ground yourself in almost like a reflex of a behavior, not so much of a strategic positioning to do good, right? It's just leaving it, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, and just move on. Whatever happens from it, happens from it. Now, as you're kind of navigating this space, working with building this business out, how do you guys transition from, making shirts or vending machines to now slowly going into, did you guys go into corporate after college? What happened in the middle between these small businesses that you're kind of creating? And, well, actually, I'm kind of curious to know, did any of those get to the point where we can really grow this? Hey, we got 4 or 5 vending machines, or, hey, these shirts are selling. Maybe we can do, another university that won national championships and leverage that. Or did those all kind of just fizzle out?
They fizzled out, and it wasn't, we never were sought out to be like, hey, let's keep this business going. It wasn't anything that really intrigued us, right? We kind of talked about a few other ideas that resembled cars, and again, that was our passion. And we actually spoke about this whole leasing a fleet model, right? When we were in college, and we're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I just had a lease agreement with Ford, and I had access to 5 different varieties of cars. I got the F-150, I got the Expedition, I got the the Focus, right? So if I need the truck for the weekend on a camping trip, I can just go turn my Focus in, go pick up the F-150, go out.
I think Volvo did a similar structure like that almost 2 or 3 years ago. And it was $900 a month, which is a little bit above my pay grade. But I was like, oh, this is actually a really cool concept that, I want to have, a convertible for the weekend, or, I'm moving next week, or helping a friend move, so I could use a big SUV or a truck. When you guys were brainstorming that, where did you guys end up?
We were kind of talking through credits and how it would work logistically. And then we tried to actually get in contact with some dealerships. But then you run into the whole thing of, okay, do I own the fleet? Do I not own the fleet, right? Are the dealerships even willing to do this, right? So, the conversations were just taking so long. And when you're in college, your mind is squirrel brain, right? If you're getting dragged out in a conversation and email chain for 5 days, you're like, all right, next thing, right? So nothing really stuck. He ended up doing an internship at this angel investment firm. So basically, they just reviewed startups, and then if they liked it, they would actually introduce that startup to a bunch of angel investors.
Oh, okay.
And so he ended up interning there. He was there for a while, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come?" And I was like, "All right, what do I got to lose? It's an internship, unpaid, of course." And I was there literally like a couple months, and they ended up getting sold to an actual fund. So he ended up joining the fund, and then I was doing some sales for like a marketing agency for a little bit, and this is still in college.
Oh, wow.
So once I graduated, I knew my senior year that I didn't want to do PT. I remember when I was growing up, I was in like high school. My dad's a construction worker, and we built the house that we currently live in. We built the one previously too, but I remember this one specifically because I was building it in high school in my first 2 years of college. And I remember we used to wake up on like the weekends and be like, "All right, we're gonna go, work on the house today." Okay, sure, yeah. We
Like
go
you're
do it.
literally building it.
Yeah.
Like hand and hammer.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So
Don't hear that often.
yeah, we bought a plot of land, took some trees down, built it up, did the whole thing. I can walk you through the process if you
This
want.
is the Abraham Lincoln story, man. What is going on?
So-
We're gonna get you a top hat next time.
Dude, it's great. I love it. Honestly.
Yeah, it's
I love,
incredible.
I love it. So I just remember thinking then, this autonomy was great. I could work as long as I wanted to. I could stop when I wanted to. Something came up. No one's telling me, no, you can't go here, can't do this. I would just go, right? And I remember thinking, I want to do my own thing. I remember this in high school distinctly. And, fast forward to later, I remember in college, I was just like, all right, I don't want to do PT. So I told my brother, who's a physician, and I remember
This is your eldest brother?
my second.
Second.
The one right above me. And I remember we're sitting in his truck and we're driving, and I broke the news. I was so scared because he was the one that like went to school and super smart guy, mashallah, and super caring. I mean, he would do anything for everybody. And I remember sitting in the truck with him riding, and I was like, "Hey, I don't want to do PT." And he goes, "Excuse me?" And I was like, "I don't want to do it." He's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I was like, "I don't know." Something in business, as big as that. And I remember him, he got so mad. He looks me in the eyes as we're driving and goes, "It's your life, do what you want." And I was like,
no.
I was like, oh, snap.
yeah, hit me with what my dad used to hit me with when he didn't want me to do something. And I was like, oof. And he's like, "Do what you want." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I kind of explained what I was, really thinking. I was like, I want to move to New York, find a job, and kind of, figure it out from there.
And this is like 2019?
2019, yeah. 20, yeah.
And is your, I guess, I don't know what you call your brother that's right above you, right? So was he the person that you usually like confided in? Like, was he kind of like your first safe space before you go super public with the rest of your family as like a feeler? Like sometimes people are like, I'm going to talk to dad first about it, see how he feels, then I'll
Maybe
move
go
on
to
to
mom.
mom, right?
Yeah.
If dad is like, absolutely not, you're like, you're just not gonna bump that email to your mom. Like, did your brother serve as that, like that initial
Both of them
filter?
did.
Okay.
Both of them did, definitely. They both kind of took different paths. So
Yeah.
one of them went like the construction route. The
Like
other
your
one
dad
went,
does, yeah.
So he went like the construction management route. The other one, obviously, physician route. And so it was cool because I got to see how each of their paths were going, right? Based on and what they decided to do. And mashallah, they're both doing fantastic now.
Alhamdulillah.
And yeah, it was just both of them. It was like, depending on the situation, was it like school based? Obviously I would, talk to the physician. Was it, maybe a little bit different life based, right? I'd talk to the other brother. I would talk to both, but they kind of both were, good reference points for, how I wanted to navigate, So I was fortunate enough. My oldest brother, I had nobody in front of him, right? He was the oldest grandchild, actually.
Oh, wow.
So from my mom's side, so he didn't have anyone to kind of look up to in terms of cousins. So he had to navigate his own path.
Or just finding what path to take or how to navigate that path. Were you surprised by their answer, or were you expected what they were going to say, like when you're going into it? Because I think for a lot well, actually I'll just leave it at that.
In terms of like starting the startup, or just
as you were telling them that you didn't want to go down the path of medicine, right? Did you have an assumption of what they were going to say, or were you kind of surprised by their response?
I knew it wasn't going to be taken, well. To be fair, it wasn't met with anger.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was more of and that was was so like, I don't know how to explain this. So like raw, and his response to me, it wasn't anger, right? It wasn't anything like that. It was just, it's your life. And I think he was just trying to explain that to me. He's like, I hope you understand.
Like, have a plan of what you're going to do.
Don't just wander around.
Yeah. And when did you tell your dad and your mom about this decision?
I told them around the same time.
Okay.
And they weren't too stoked about it. I took a trip up to New York. Funny enough, I have family here, actually in Staten Island, and I took a trip up.
And you're originally from where again?
Florida.
In Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. Where part? Where about?
New Smyrna Beach. It's a small little beach town.
Okay.
Just outside of Orlando, maybe like 30, 45 minutes.
Okay.
So actually, shark bite capital of the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good to
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of those Florida guys, that's exactly what they do. They build their own stuff.
Yeah.
It fits the role.
I love it, dude. I miss Florida a lot. But yeah, I remember I came up here just on a friend trip for New Year's, and I saw my cousin, and her husband was there, who's, he was working as sales for The Economist.
Oh.
And he's like, you got to move up to New York. This is where all the jobs are. And he riled me up. And that was like my last semester finishing up. And I remember I went home from that trip and I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to go to New York. And they're like, where are you going to work? And I was like, I'll figure it out. So literally that Ramadan, I think, was in, I believe, April or May of that year. And no, it was June. It was June. That's a long time ago. It was in June. And I remember I told my parents, I was like, all right, I'm going to finish Ramadan here. We'll spend that together, because I had finished school. And I was like, I'm going to fly up to New York. I'm going to stay in the basement. I'm going to find a job. And my parents looked at me crazy. My dad, obviously he moved when he was like 17 right here. So he understands. He's like, you got to do what you got to do. My mom obviously is sad, but she's like, you're going to stay with family. I'm not going to live on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my cousin, I was like, I'm coming up. And her husband's like, you are? And he was like scared. He's like, oh, I didn't know you were going to actually do it. I was like, you told me.
How's your basement?
A
little room.
Can I build?
So bought a one-way ticket, flew up here. And then I've never had someone been on my case as much as this guy was. Every day.
Your sister's husband.
Yeah, my cousin's husband.
Your cousin's husband.
Every day. Where'd you apply? Who'd you reach out to? Who'd you talk to? I'm like, dude.
Did you find that helpful? Or,
no.
Or
Yeah, it was.
Or just like, oh my God, relax, man.
It was.
Or both.
It was both. Because sometimes I'm like, dude, I just want to eat dinner. I've been in the city all day roaming around, applying for jobs in the library here. And I came from a small town. I grew up in a very, very small town. And the city's intimidating.
Yeah.
Right? You look up these giant buildings. Everyone's everywhere. There's buses. I remember I had my first interview in the city. I was nervous.
And the personalities in New York are as big as the buildings themselves. So.
People are not nice. They're not nice.
Yeah, I swear we just landed this morning, and I tried to say hi to like 7 people, and it's just like no response.
Yeah, they said bye.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you, sir.
It's not common for
No, I've been to New York plenty of times. I know the deal, but it's just like in my nature to like just like talk to people, I guess. But like in
Very southern
someone walks
drive-by.
into the elevator and just say, hey, how are you doing? You doing okay? All right, great. Have a good day.
We
Simple,
don't
right?
actually mean it, but we just say it.
I genuinely want the person to have a good day. Like, why would I wish them anything else?
You just gotta one up the New Yorker. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if he makes it awkward, you gotta make it more awkward.
I have no problem doing that either.
That's the way you gotta do it.
So your cousin's husband is on your case now. Is he quite your senior, or is he about your age at that time?
No, he's older.
He's older.
Yeah. He's a bit older.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And is he Albanian as well?
No, he's
background,
actually
or?
Syrian.
He's Syrian. Okay, so
Yeah.
he's making sure that you're on your case. Now, what was like your game plan in terms of how long you're gonna be in New York before you're like, all right, I gotta pack up the suitcase and head back home?
Yeah, I told myself about a month and a half, 2 months. I didn't tell anybody else that. That was just an internal, like, this is kind of where I'll just pack up and go home and then just keep applying from there. Because I'm staying in their basement. I feel bad, eating their food. doing everything
Right.
with them, and it's not nice to be a burden on someone for so long. So he wanted what's best for me. Obviously, it wasn't anything bad. And obviously, I prayed for it. I was like, oh, well, if this is the best thing for me, then let it happen. And I remember my aunt from Florida came up. It was July 4th weekend, and there was like a family barbecue, obviously. And I didn't have a job at this point. I'm hanging out, swimming, throwing the football. And I remember her just looking at me, like, just dumbfounded. And she ends up going back to Florida, and I get a phone call from my mom, or my sister, excuse me. And my sister's like, hey, everyone's terrified right now for you. And I said, why? She says, because you don't have a job, and you look like you're the happiest person in the world. You're just up there for a month, no job.
I got free bed, free food, of course.
I was like, I'm applying to 5 to 10 jobs a day, networking with as many people as I can. What else do you want me to do here? If something's meant to be, it's going to happen. You're not going to force it. And so everyone was freaking out because I wasn't freaking out. That was the thing. They're like, you don't look nervous about this. And I told them, I was like, what do you want me to do here? I can only apply to so many jobs. I can only put so much effort in. Khalas, whatever, it is what it is. And my cousin, she's like, hey, I think you should talk to one of the vendors I work with. So I ended up reaching out to them. And they were an apparel business. They did mostly socks and then like baby shoes and some baby clothes and stuff like that. And I ended up speaking with the HR lady. And my salary expectations every day were just like, all right, I'll take less, And I got there, and subhanAllah, she was actually like this like French Muslim lady. And I met her, we hit it off. She like loved me. And she's like, I want you to meet the CEO. And I was like, okay. And so I go and I speak to the CEO. And this was the first time I spoke to like a legitimate CEO. And they did decent numbers. It was about like $80 to $100 million in sales a year.
Wow.
And I meet this guy, and he's actually a Jewish guy, I remember, and super nice guy to me. And he goes, first question he asked me, he goes, do you use the internet? And this was for e-com, like an e-com gig. I was like, no, I use dial-up. And he looked at me, and I was like, of course. What do you mean, do I use the internet? I'm 21, 22 years old. Like, of course I do. He's like, well, what do you know? And I just started talking. I don't know. I didn't prepare for this, nothing. And he's like, okay, like, we'll talk to you soon. And my cousin ends up calling him, and she's like, hey, like, how did you like speaking with my cousin? He's like, that was your cousin? And she's like, yeah, he's hired.
Oh,
wow.
SubhanAllah. So he ends up calling me literally probably about a week before I booked my ticket home.
wow.
And he's like, all right, we want to offer you the gig. And I was like, that's it. So SubhanAllah, started there, flew home, grabbed a couple things, came back up. I'm still in the basement. And then my uncle has an apartment that was getting rented out. 1 month after I started, boom, the tenant leaves. And he's like, you're in. Everything, SubhanAllah, just
falls right into place.
Fell right into place. And I remember my cousin used to be like, you're the luckiest person. They always tell me, my family tells me, you're the luckiest person. Things just work out. And I'm like, you don't see that half of what's happening. You think things, like, I just show you that things work out. Things are not working out. And SubhanAllah, I ended up moving in. Someone left, my other cousin left a couch there. I picked up a couch. I picked up a random TV, random like credenza. I had a bed randomly. It was the most basic apartments in Staten Island. And yeah, I just started working for this company there. And 6 months later, COVID hit. And my co-founder at the time he's still working at that fund.
At that fund, right?
Yeah, and I remember when we separated, he was like, we both told each other like, hey, if you think of a good idea, call. So he ended up going that route. I ended up going e-com.
I have a few questions before you move forward here. So one is, I guess, as you're going through this very turbulent period of uncertainty, right? Everyone around you, your closest circles, are feeling that, but not from you. It's the lack of you feeling that. They're feeling it on your behalf. But you kind of mentioned throughout your process here, you're having a lot of like tawakkul in Allah, like the plan that Allah has set for you. You're having a lot of confidence of whatever happens, happens. Even if it means leaving, you've like kind of accepted that. how did you have you always kind of operated in that type of mindset? Or was that something that you really saw come to life during this like turbulent period in your life?
It's actually a good question. I haven't thought too deeply about it.
We can edit, so take your time.
No. It's funny because now when I deep it, I think just subconsciously I saw how my parents were, right? You know, obviously classic. You didn't make a ton of money, but subhanallah, like the way there was barakah and everything. People used to think that my family was lying about how much they made. They used to say, "There's no way you're making this much. You live in a nice house, right?" And that's a house we built from scratch, from the ground, right? Money they saved away, subhanAllah. And you see, like, when you put your faith in Allah, there's going to be barakah on your money. There's going to be barakah on everything that you do, right? The money's halal. The food you eat is halal. The way you live your life is halal. Everything else, right? Allah will put barakah on it. And so I saw the way they were rewarded for their struggle, right? Now that I think about it, that's honestly probably where it came from, you know? And then at the end of the day, you can only control what you can. The rest is up to Allah, right? No matter what happens, good or bad, say alhamdulillah, move on, and that's really it.
Do you feel like if we kind of dial the clock back, right? Do you feel like the support that you got from your family, from the way they approached those things, or even if you were giving that advice to someone else who's kind of going through a similar period, maybe it's a younger cousin, whomever, how do you balance a line between like concern and support and trust in Allah, like as a sideline cheerleader, right? Because sometimes I feel like when you're like, hey, just like have tawakkul on Allah and like move forward, like does that come off as dismissive? I'm kind of curious, like how would have liked to have been supported, or do you think it was like the perfect amount that you had received?
I think it was perfect. Honestly, I think there was no anger or hate. It was straightforward, serious. This is, you know, we support you with what you do, because my family saw that I wasn't just like bumming around, right? You know, it wasn't just, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and I'm hanging out here on the weekend, and I'm going here, and I'm spending other people's money, right, to do these things. I think they saw that, and they were like, okay, you know, your head's right. You actually have some, you know, drive in you that you want to do something. And it was like, okay, this is your life. Make sure this is what you do, and be careful, right? I think the way to kind of answer your question about how you navigate that whole tawakkul, right? When you're having a conversation with somebody, you know, are they putting in effort, right? What is their intention behind what they're building, right? Is it for the sake of Allah? SubhanAllah, it's so funny because it's funny to admit this. I didn't start, you know, we didn't do payroll. I didn't do payroll for the sake of Allah, right? Yeah. It was kind of like, oh, I wanted to start. It wasn't a deep thought. It was like, oh, okay, let's do it. But subhanAllah, when you have that intention, when you're starting something, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, then there's a good chance you might be rewarded for it, right? Inshallah. I was actually just taking a class on the fiqh of money, and I forget the mathematician's name, the Muslim mathematician who you know studied algebra, discovered algebra.
I think Al-Wazaji, something like that.
I think so, yeah.
I know algebra is from his book Al-Jabbar, but that's about.
Yeah, so he actually one of his intentions is he wanted to learn math so he could better calculate. Sorry, I might need to edit this.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
He wanted to learn math to better calculate.
Like Salah time or something? Or
no,
what?
oh man.
We can Google it.
I've been up since 6 a.m.
No, you're good. You can Google it if you have your phone on you.
Yeah, it was inheritance.
Inheritance.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So he discovered algebra because he sought out to better calculate inheritance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
SubhanAllah. So I remember hearing that when I was in my class like 2 weeks ago. I was like, what? I was shocked.
The intention, yeah.
And I told myself, I was like, all right, like the next thing I do, inshallah, is like, I want to make it my intention versus like, this is a benefit for Muslims or whoever it is. And this is for this, you know, the sake of Allah. This is why I want to build this. The next one I do.
Inshallah. So jumping back in now. So you're in this stage, were you trying to find any job Was it like anything that, or were you looking for something in a particular niche in terms of like applying for roles?
It was really anything sales or maybe even e-com related.
Okay.
I didn't really have experience in either, but I was like, I can at least get in, right? And
Something
learn.
adjacent to what you did in college
Yeah.
and the side hustles. And then what's your co-founder's name?
KP.
KP. So were you talking to KP at this time when you make this leap going from Florida to New York? Like, was he ever concerned? I was like, yo, dude, what are you doing?
No.
No, he's like...
No. He's a full send type of guy. He's just like me, send it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like any type of concern for him. And I remember when he was, a couple years later going through some rough patches in, his career, I remember he called me and he was like really concerned. He got like some bad news. And I felt bad because I told him probably what seemed super dismissive, but it wasn't intended to be. I said, you'll be fine. If anybody I'm not worried about, it's you. Right? And I hope it didn't come off as dismissive. It may have.
KP, you heard it here first.
Yeah. No, he knows. Because I remember we talked about it a couple years later. I was like, was that dismissive? And he kind of looked at me and I was like, all right, maybe it was. But I was like, dude, you're a super capable guy, smart, driven. You know how to talk to people. You're gonna be fine.
You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. You made your connections. You know what you're doing. And obviously, fast forward today, that's the case. But yeah, he wasn't too concerned. We were very supportive of each other with everything that we did. Excuse me.
Oh, amazing.
So in between this kind of journey to find a role, a job, kind of a place to cement like the next step in your career, your ladder, right? Can you walk us through like how you went from there to like then reconnecting with KP and basically deciding that, hey, like fintech is the space that I really want to focus on? Like what were some of the variables to kind of make that transition, as well as like what was your kind of decision making process to pick fintech versus something else?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about the lack of exposure that I had, right? Because growing up in a small town, immigrant family, like I was saying before, in terms of what you can do in life is the window's small, right? And it's not intentional. Well, a lot of this is nothing intentional on them, right? The world is evolving, the world changes, there's new opportunities, new jobs available. And I didn't have any exposure. I didn't know what a startup was. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously I knew what a startup was, but I didn't know anything about it.
Like what it actually entailed.
Yeah.
Raising money, seed round, pre-seed, all these like little terms.
Did you like find that beneficial, or did you find that concerning? Because I think sometimes I've heard this saying that like if founders knew the journey that they're going to have to take, they would have never probably started. So do you agree with that, or do you think that like there's some benefit to being like a little naive about the process in the beginning? What's your thoughts?
100%. 100%. I think it's funny we talk about it now, and I was like, yeah, no. If we knew this is what was how payroll went, we would have picked an easier business, right? I think everyone says this because everything at surface level is super simple and straightforward, and then
you're in too deep.
Yeah, and then you're in too deep. So being naive, being green, definitely played a positive factor because we were just getting in so deep into the issue, and then it was
fintech, baby.
Full send. So the way that whole like conversation essentially went was, I was doing e-com for this apparel company, and I remember I still remember the lockdown in New York happening specifically, and I called the CEO and I'm like, hey Arthur, like, can I go, like, what are you going to the office next week? Because we were in office every day. There's no choice. And I hear him in his car driving, and he had a place out in North Carolina, and he's like, I'm leaving the city. You should leave. And I was like, thank you. Literally 1 hour later, I booked my ticket to Florida. I got on the plane. It was like 10 people on this flight. Everyone's coughing, obviously. And I flew to Florida, and I was like, all right, I'm going to just crash here and just stay here for a little bit. And then 2 weeks later, he calls me, and he's like, hey, there was like 130 people at the company. They fired, I believe it was like 70 of them right off the bat.
Wow.
And
is this on the factory side of things, or
no? So we were actually licensing out other brands.
Okay.
We bought a couple of our own, but we were mostly licensing out other brands, and then designing the socks or the whatever loungewear.
Gotcha.
And then we were selling it. So there was an arm of the business who was selling to like Walmart, Marshalls, whatever it was. And then I was obviously doing the e-com side. So we did everything from design, and then we would obviously work with the manufacturers to get everything made, and then we would then sell it from there. And I remember he called me and he was like in tears. And he's like, hey, but we're going to keep 60 people. 30 of them are going to be no pay. They're going to be on furlough. And the other 30 are going to be 80% pay cut.
80%?
80% pay cut.
80% pay cut.
And he says to me, because there was 3 or 4 other people on the e-com team that he didn't like. And he's like, only one of them I'm going to keep, but she's going to be like furloughed, no pay. We're just going to pay for their insurance. He's like, I want to offer you first. Mind you, I had no experience when I started, and this was 6 months into the gig, but he just liked working with me. And he said, I want to offer it to you. Do you want to take it? And I was like, I thought about it. And I spoke with my dad, and my dad goes, what do you have to lose? What are you doing now? You're home doing nothing. Take it. He says, maybe when they start back up again, they'll hire you. So I said, okay. So I started, I was like, all right, I'm going to work 1 day a week. The rest of the days I played Fortnite. Some days I would go work construction here just to make a little bit extra cash, but I was just playing Fortnite, especially those first few weeks. And I started focusing on my health. I had so much time, dude. I was so bored, especially in Florida. No one's hanging out. So I was just like running, working out, playing video games, and then working like 1 to 2 days a week on the company. And I remember my COO called me, who I kind of butted heads with a little bit. And he's like, hey, I need you to get these like reports for, whatever. And he's like, can you send it to me now? And I remember I was playing Fortnite, and I didn't like him. And I told him, I don't ever forget this. I go, hey, even though my pay stopped, my bills haven't. I'm working another job right now. I'll get it to you on Monday. And he went silent. And I was like, bye. I hung up, jumped right back on. Everyone's like, what are you doing? I was like, a work call. I remember I was there, and then they ended up selling to a private equity firm. I got rehired, alhamdulillah, new management, whatever, and I was working there. And I was there about 6 months, working 12-hour days, still the same pay I was making before, which was so low. And there was a team of 4, and now it's a team of 1. And I was managing Amazon, Walmart.com, the D2C website, and they just wouldn't give me a raise. And I was like, guys, like, I'm keeping the ship afloat here myself. The guy, one of the 4 people you fired is making like 150.
Jeez. I
was like, I'm making a third of it. You got to help me out here. And I came back, and then they layered me. And I was like,
what does that mean, layered?
They gave me a manager.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm mad. I'm like, thanks for like, me putting up with all this, sticking through it. You like put somebody above me. Right. And that was like the first straw. And then I remember I was flying, a year had passed at the new gig, and they're like, everyone's going to get a bonus. I'm super excited. Right. I make no money, right, comparatively to like people here in New York. And they're like, you're going to get a bonus. I remember I'm on the flight home back to Florida. I'm super excited. I'm going to get a bonus. I'm literally texting my mom on the plane, check my bank. Did it hit? Because they didn't tell me what it was. And my mom goes, yeah, you got one deposit. And I go, how much? It's for the year, by the way. $294.16.
Oh, wow.
And I go, no. And she goes, yeah. And I hung up. I pulled out my personal laptop, and I opened up a construction LLC by the time I landed in Florida. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done with these guys. You're not going to do that to me. So I landed in Florida, started up a construction company out here in New York. And I found a manufacturer of fences, specialty fences out in Canada. And they just started doing it in New York. They just opened up.
2022?
2021 now at this point.
Okay.
Early 2021. So mid 2020. No, 2021, excuse me. I'm getting my dates confused.
Yeah.
So it was like early 2021 when this happened. So I spoke to this, the manufacturer. I was like, hey, you'll be our Northeast contractor. I'm like, all right, fantastic. So anytime they got sales, they just sent it my way. I'd go take the jobs. And this fence was not a cheap fence. It was like, I don't know if prices are probably irrelevant to everybody. It was like $700 for a 6-foot long fence. It was aluminum, right? And so the houses I was going to were like $2 million houses, $3 million houses. And they're paying $30,000, $40,000 for like 200 feet of fence.
Wow.
And I'm not going to go in there and make $1,000. I was like, no, I'm charging you 10. I'm installing $30,000. I'm charging you 10. I was installing the fence in 2-3 days. I've never made that. I was making more money than ever just doing that. And I was still keeping my other gigs. I was like, they have insurance, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like just continuing that path for a bit. And midnight, I get a phone call. And it's KP. And he's like, hey. I was like, what's up? He's like, why can't I get paid in crypto? I was like, could you not? And this was when crypto started, like, really started picking up steam. And I was like, what do you mean, can you not? He's like, no, I can't. And then one thing led to another. We were on the phone for like 3 hours. It was like 3:30 in the morning. And I was like, dude, I got to go sleep. I was like, but I'm in. We're like, do you want to do this? I was like, I'm in. Let's just both leave, go do our own research, talk to other people, see if they're interested in this. And let's do it. So branched out, spoke to a bunch of people like, hey, would you like to get some of your paycheck in crypto and cash? And people a lot of times are going to tell you what you want to hear. We got a lot of like, yeah, I'd love to do it. Yeah, I'll be an early customer. I'll be a beta customer. Once you launch, let me know. Once you have this feature, let me know.
Yeah.
No. We got a lot of positive feedback from close people. And he ended up started raising money, and we're like, all right, let's do it. And then he actually convinced his dad, who's like this super good engineer who works for literally Disney.
Wow.
And he's like, hey, do you want to come build this? And he's like, if you can raise the money, I'll quit my job and I'll do it. So fast forward a few months, we incorporated in November of 2021. Me, him, and his dad as co-founders. And then just started building.
So KP's dad's the third co-founder.
Yep. He's the technical one.
Wow. Okay. And he's an Imagineer, or I guess previously an Imagineer, a Disney engineer.
Yeah.
How long was he at Disney for?
So he worked for Capgemini, who was contracted out, but his project was Disney.
Okay.
I say he worked because he was there. I think like 5 years he was working just Disney projects. So, yeah, he was there for a while. I mean, he's like later on in his career. I mean, this guy's. It's been so good because it's like the father in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When two younger guys are like, oh, we should do this or that. It was kind of like, what are you guys thinking? I'm like, no, this is not a good idea, or like this is a good idea. So it was really good to have that like kind of like parent, per se in the room and kind of keeping us grounded.
Now, you've obviously worked with your dad in terms of construction and things like that. Has KP ever worked with his dad before in any capacity outside of this venture?
That was the first time.
How did you feel about dad joining the crew?
I knew him for a while, and obviously I knew his dad. I was excited. I was like, this is an engineer, right? And for me, obviously it's new. I didn't really have an opinion. I was like, all right, this guy knows how to build software. Mm-hmm. And he's someone you obviously trust, who you're close with. Let's do it. So it wasn't anything. I didn't feel any point. It was like a territorial thing where it's like, no, I don't want this guy on my team. It was kind of like, I didn't care about that. I didn't care about any of that stuff, right? I didn't really know about it, to be honest as well, but I also didn't care about it. I was like, I want to do this. This seems fun. This seems cool, new. I don't care about any of the noise. I just want to build something that I think is awesome.
So what was your kind of role and what was KP's role in comparison to, I guess, some of the other skill sets of the team?
Yeah, so KP was obviously CEO. So he was doing all the fundraising, go-to-market, sales.
All the talking to investors, rubbing sandpaper on your face all the time.
Yeah, poor guy. I hear him on the phone calls.
No, it's brutal, man.
It's not fun. I hear him, and I was like, yeah, no, you can keep doing that. So our whole thing was, divide and conquer. So his dad was the technology part of the business. He was like sales, go to market, CEO, obviously, so raising the money. And then I was just doing everything in-house. So operations, product, whatever it is. I was just cleaning up. I was like, anything and everything else that needs to be done, I'm there to do it.
So in that so like you basically come together as a team and enough to basically onboard KP's dad, right? Like you guys have enough conviction to be able to do that, raise capital and publicly talk to people. But that initial stage going from 0 to 1, right? Like building your initial product. How was that journey like? Like what was the process of how you guys validated your approach as well as like actually building out that product? So one of the things you mentioned is like, hey, when you first started, you were asking a lot of people that were maybe in your close network, right? And sometimes I think we've experienced this too. Like it may not be, it's nice, it's kind, but you're trying to get to truth, right?
Yep.
You're trying to get to value. So what was that kind of like, and how did that translate into actually building a product that was closer aligned to something that was like marketable and ready to actually push out live?
Yeah. None of us really came from a payroll background. So it was honestly just learn on the fly, right? Like we kind of knew crypto, and then we're like, all right, we got to figure out this payroll piece, right? And so it was honestly like looking at other, competitors in the space, talking to people, saying like, hey, like, let me see how you, like, what would you like your payroll assistant to have? What do you not like, and just speaking with them through that. And so obviously it was growing pains because we built this beta list, right? People are like, yeah, I'll give you $50. We're like, oh, can you just show us that we just wanted to prove that someone would give us money for this, right? Mm-hmm. So we're like, hey, can you join the beta list? It's like $50. And, all the friendlies are like, yeah, sure. Here's $50. And we're like, all right, what functionalities do you need in order to leave ADP, to leave QuickBooks, Paychecks? And, they're like, oh, I would like, this feature and that feature. And you're like, okay, let's go build it. So you would go and you would, take the time and design the screens and build the back end and make sure, does what it needs to do. And then you would go back to them and say, hey, look, it's ready. You ready to switch over? Yeah, but you don't do this, or they would just not respond.
The target's just moving.
It just constantly moves, right? And it took us years to realize that you can't just follow that. You can't just follow what your friends are like, or people say they what they need you to do, right? Obviously, it's now people tell us like, hey, we need this feature. And we're like, yeah, we know. Like we're building it.
Yeah, it's our roadmap.
we understand the landscape now, so we know what's more important, what's not important, right? We're dealing with such a higher volume of customers that we know like, hey, like these 50 guys are asking for this feature, right? It's probably worth building.
Yeah, but so going back to like that initial, because I think there's so much like context and value in that experience, because there's a lot of people that out of our listeners that are probably in that same position where they're entering a new industry, a new vertical. They may not have like a lot of expertise or experience in it. They don't know how to gauge like priority levels because they don't know the lay of the land. What worked? Like, I guess in hindsight, you said it took a couple years for you guys to kind of understand the space a little bit better, enough to be able to get to that point. Is there something that you can advise someone that's starting out? Like, what would be a better approach from your perspective to save some of those years, right? Is there something that you can do, or you just kind of have to do it and kind of figure out your way? What's your thoughts?
I think it's trial and error. At least that's the way I feel. It's funny because you kind of have an unfair advantage now with AI where you can kind of just ask it questions and it can quickly just tell you yes or no on a lot of things. But honestly, it's trial and error. And I really appreciate that approach and respect it because you learn at a really deep understanding why it doesn't work, right? You're not just being told like, oh, this won't work, right? We love challenging people. We spoke to investors or whatever the case was, and or other friends, and we'd be like, hey, we want to do this, and they'd be like, it won't work. Why? And then they would give you a reason. No, why? You're not answering the question. Why? You kind of push that, and you really start to see, is there understanding of like, are they telling you no because they have a deep understanding of why it won't work, or are they just telling you no because
It's always been that way.
It's always been that way. Yep.
Now, as you're kind of, I guess, quizzing or investigating these potential customers, I think when it comes to like these types of products, actually any product, getting that first customer often is the hardest thing ever. I mean, even like building up this podcast, right? In the creative space, they say your first 100 subscribers is probably the hardest. Then it's your first 1,000. Going from 1,000 to 10,000 is easier than going from 0 to 1,000. How has that, like, how did you go about approaching getting that first paid customer that is like, oh, this is great. Here's my money.
Close friend. They're like, hey, I'll try it out. And like I said before, we were doing crypto payroll, so it was a mix of both. So we found a close friend that was, another startup, a friendly, who was super simple, super basic. And it's just asking 100,000 people until one person says yes, like, I'll try it, right? And so it was just, I don't know, maybe 500 people we spoke to. I don't want to say one of the 500 joined, but it was a lot of like, yeah, I'll do it, and then they kind of, just, like I said before, they just kind of don't respond, or the case is that one, you'll eventually get a yes, right? If it makes sense, if what you're building makes sense. And then honestly, it was also, even if you're partnering with like another vendor who's another startup, sometimes it's good to be like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You should use my product, I'll use yours. Type of situation. And that's super helpful too, because when you're working with other people in startups, they'll be straight with you a lot of times, right? They'll be like, hey, this doesn't work, right? And they'll also be patient because they understand it's not easy, right? So just pound the ground.
Selling, yeah.
Yeah.
Brute force.
Yeah. Honestly.
Well, one thing that's kind of interesting about this particular space, right, is that one, crypto, there's a lot of interpretations about crypto depending on when you joined in, who you were talking to, and what narrative was kind of being told at you, right, at that particular point in time, right? And so like one of the things that's interesting when you level that up to like a more enterprise or B2B or even B2C, which is, I would say, is kind of your B2B to C, like your platform is, I think. It's like one of the things that makes this a little bit more unique is the level of compliance that may be required, or the level of like regulatory check, right? Like, and this is what year is this exactly?
21.
Okay, so it's relatively
22, 21, yeah.
Yeah, so it's still in a time period when the administrations vary against this stuff. Yeah. Now it's a very different landscape, but
we're also looking at post GameStop, but also hype of NFTs.
Yep.
And this, like, in that point of time, NFTs were going really unregulated and just blowing off.
Yeah, and I mean, from my standpoint, like Operation Chokehold and all these other things, like the administration was very against a lot of this stuff, right? And like, yep. So like, how did you guys deal with like some of those? Like, one, I guess the first question is, do you think that averted some of your potential customer base? And how did you like define who you actually wanted past like that initial friend, right? Like, how did you actually like say, hey, like this is my target audience, and I'm actually getting traction with these people, And did the compliance piece really affect any of that conversation, and how much?
Greatly. So we were actually working with a BaaS solution at first. When we first started, obviously, in order to make payments, you need money transmitter licenses, which cost literally millions of dollars.
And what solution?
BaaS solution.
BaaS.
Yeah.
And what's that?
So they basically just build on top of banks.
Okay.
Right, and then you can kind of utilize the bank's rails through them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It's basically called banking as a service.
Gotcha.
BaaS.
Cool.
Yep. And it's like in America particularly, the U.S. dollar based systems. They have they don't give licenses to just anybody. You have to. It's a very gruesome. It's like a rite of passage
Okay.
because they get advantage, right, in some capacity, and it's particularly they want to control like who gets. they want to be aware of like who gets certain amounts of funds or visibility to those funds, and so like there's like a lot of regulations on AML and KYC, like knowing your customer.
Right.
So whether you're a regional bank, even some of these regional banks, they don't have licenses.
Right.
They actually have partnerships with. When they start out, they have partnerships.
To segue that.
Right.
I see.
So they're kind of like a middleman in some capacity. So a lot of these fintech solutions, they don't have enough traction or capital raised to pay for the legal fees and the licenses. So what they do is they just are a UI-based solution that is in certain industry verticals to penetrate. Right?
Gotcha.
Yep.
And they just kind of have the bank in the background that's actually running all the payment rails.
I see.
Did I explain that?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Yep. They just offer some APIs that you can tap into the bank's rails.
Okay.
Obviously, that's a simplification because there's a lot of complexity
You're
with
right.
the banking rails.
I just
It's
want to
very
have some
archaic.
background for the listeners because we interview a bunch of people, so not everyone's like finance focused.
Yeah.
So okay, so you're using that type of structure.
Yeah. So we were working with them, and we went through due diligence for literally 1 year and 1 day, right? Kind of to your point where it was, how tough was it?
That's relatively fast, actually.
And
I know it doesn't seem like that in the startup world.
it doesn't, but it killed us because by the time we were able to launch, crypto started crashing, right? FTX fell. Literally, I think a couple months after we got approval, right? So we didn't even get a chance to really go live, right?
So it's like you got the golden key and now it's irrelevant.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So they actually were built on top of Evolve Bank. And I don't know if you guys know the situation with Evolve, but there's a lot of regulatory issues that's going on with them currently.
Oh wow, okay.
And so they were built on top of Evolve, and I remember we were going through contracting, and we're about 8 months into this, and they were like, "Hey," I remember they were like, Scylla, the company was called Scylla, and they were like, "Hey, you have to approve, our language in your docs." And I was like, "Okay, cool, send it to me." So they sent it to me. We'd incorporate it, send it to our legal team review. Our legal team says, "Cool." Send it back to them. They're like, "Looks good," and then they obviously would have to send it to the bank because, again, the bank has to approve everybody that's coming in. And I remember it was like one day I got a response from them, and they were literally redlining what they told me to put in the contract. And we're about 8 months in this, and I blew up. I literally like went crazy because we're spending all this time and all these legal fees to like review this. And I was like, "You guys clearly have a problem with your bank. You go figure it out before you come back to us and waste my time." And then we just didn't hear from them for like a month. And they finally came back, and I was like, "You tell me what you want me to put." I was like begging them. I was like, "Just tell me what you want us to put."
Man's crashing out before crashing out.
Very, yeah, definitely, because it was so long at this point.
Yeah.
And obviously, the longer the technology we had was pretty much ready to go, right? And the process is you're not going to build the perfect product the first time. It's gonna take time. So we literally begged them to launch like a couple customers, like approve us for like $100,000 a month in payroll. Literally begged them, and then finally, like their chief risk officer was like loved us, and he like went to bat for us, and he's like, "Okay, I got you approved for $100K a month." And we're like, "All right, amazing." So we just went and started processing, and then as we're still going through that process, and then I remember the team that approved us on a Friday, I got the email. They're like, "Hey, you're good to go. You're approved." We celebrated like crazy. We're like, "Let's go." Monday rolls around, and the two guys, the team that approved us, gets fired, and we're like, "That's weird." And we start processing for like the next 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, boom, one of the payments weren't going through, and we're like, "What's going on?" So we reach out, and they're like, "Hey, you didn't pass due diligence yet." And we're like, "Well, what are you talking about? We got the approval. Here's the email." They're like, "No, that was from the old team. A new team has stepped in. You have to go through reapproval." At this point, we're like, we have to leave. Forget these BaaS solutions. Let's go directly to a bank. So KP ended up get connected to another bank. We ended up just switching and going to that bank directly instead of using a BaaS solution, and started going through their process. And that only took about 6 months, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's still pretty fast. Sorry, I know that must be painful to hear, but that's like these banks, man. They're so slow.
Yeah.
the regulatory. I mean, they're just so risk averse on some of these fintech solutions. Now it's gotten better, I would say, but it's because they're kind of forced to be.
There was like no there was.
I mean,
it was the Wild West, right? People were just
I
doing whatever they wanted.
I would say it's worse than that, because it's like it was the Wild West, but like a state was after you as well on top of that. So it's like you didn't have the luxury to go do whatever you want. But also at the same time, you're going to be held accountable for it.
So you're kind of like breaking the rules unknowingly.
Well, you don't know if you are.
Yeah. Unknowingly.
Right? And that's probably where these institutions were struggling to even pass this approval. But so help me understand Rollfi a little bit better. So were you guys only processing customers that wanted their paycheck in crypto, and that was like the main thing that you guys did? So is that correct?
No. So we were doing both cash and crypto.
Okay.
Right. So later on, fast forward over a couple months, they're like, hey, you're only approved to do 5% of your transaction volume in crypto.
So first,
just weird
some
limitations.
So basically your pitch would be like, hey, like you have your business doing, I own a couple of I own a grocery store, right? I offer my employees, you come to me, and I work with Rollfi, and basically now I can offer my employees payroll through you guys, and then they have the option to determine the scale of how much they want to get paid out.
Correct.
In crypto or not, 5%, 0% to 5% at this time, right?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So that's basically the way we structured it, and we also structured it in a way where the business didn't have to touch crypto at all.
Okay.
So the wallets were owned by
yeah, exactly. So the way it would work was we worked directly with an exchange, and we would take the post-tax money that the employee would make, right? So then that is the percentage would be based off the post-tax amount, right? So if their net take home is $2,000 and they want to do 50%, we would literally just say, okay, $1,000 in Bitcoin, send us your wallet address, done.
Would you say that at that time, or would that just be like when the deposit hits, right? That's before Rollfi existed. Deposit hits, and then I want to say do X amount into Bitcoin. I would say weekly buy or bi-weekly buy on, let's say, Coinbase, and then Coinbase will just do that transactions, and then boom, it's storing it on Coinbase wallet.
Yep.
Is that essentially what is more or less what happening?
We were just skipping that additional
in
process.
the middle step.
Yeah.
Right.
So the whole point was just like you would kind of treat it as like some type of investment. We were like, I want to put 2% into Bitcoin. I don't want to think about it. I just wanted to go to my wallet.
Yeah.
And that's really it. So,
and where are you making money in this processing?
So we were at the time, because we were early on, we were just charging them a per company EIN fee and a per seat, right? Per employee, per contractor that was getting paid for the month.
Oh, so not for transaction volume.
No. We were not charging on transaction volume.
And why is that?
Well, standard payroll for SMBs, they're not charging on transaction volume. They're
Oh,
charging,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
So they're saying, I mean, depends how you're. If you're doing it just a standard, ACH to your employees, they're charging you an EIN fee, and then they charge you per person per month.
I see.
Right. Obviously, there's other things where you can like do instant deposit, which they might charge you 1%, or I think Chase does if you want to like instantly send money to somebody. It's like a 1% fee or something like this. So we were just like, let's make this pricing very simple, very easy to digest. Let's just get people on, get feedback, what works, what doesn't work, break it so we can fix it, and then we'll kind of grow from there. Okay. So, when we launched, it was such a short window, and then FTX crashed. So that's why I get so angry thinking about it, because I was like, they held us for a year.
Yeah.
We missed a really good window, because our whole pitch to why someone would want to use us was, it was a very favorable market for employees, right? A lot of businesses were hiring at the time. So how could you incentivize someone that you want to hire to join your company? It's by offering them benefits, maybe, something that they would enjoy. So a lot of the startups that we were trying to, bring on were like, hey, crypto's hot right now. The employees that you might want to hire might pick you because you can actually just pay them in Bitcoin or
like a very progressive offering.
Yeah. So that was kind of our thought process. Then obviously, crypto crashed, and we were thinking like, we had a round of funding that a lot of it got stripped away once it crashed.
So did you guys pivot at that moment? Like, what did you guys do? Or did you guys just say, hey, no, we still think that this is the industry, but maybe now we'll just take... We weren't able to strike while the iron was hot, but maybe we will the next time around. What was your thought process?
We knew eventually, like, it will be, super beneficial, and people will want to, maybe take some of their paycheck in crypto. The issue is, obviously, the timing wasn't great. The market started to shift from a very, employer advantage market to now the businesses have the upper hand. And once that started shifting and less people wanted crypto as payment because of all the crashes, we started to get worried. We're like, oh, what do we do? Compliance is super expensive, like I was saying before. It takes forever, right? They have so many random they would just literally email you. The bank would just email you one day. You can't do this. You literally have no choice. You can literally call them and fight all you want. Sometimes you can like maybe get a little wiggle room, but what are you going to do, right? When they're your processor, they just tell you, no, you're good. You can't do this.
So did you guys, so what, I'm kind of trying to figure out, so that's a very tough spot to be in, right? I'm sure those are some tough decisions and conversations, but what did you guys do after that? Like, how did you guys, like, pivot, I guess, or did you guys pivot?
Yeah, we did. This is probably honestly one of the coolest stories of Rollfi so far, but, we were sitting there twiddling our thumbs, runways not looking good, and we're thinking, what do we do, right? We have a knife and everyone else has got an army, right? Like, we're trying to fight people for ADP when ADP has all these features that we don't have yet, right? They already have that inherent market trust with all of these people as well. That's the tough part, right? Especially when you're dealing with something as critical as payroll, right? Like, your life literally depends on your payroll being in your account when it comes payday. And when you're walking up to a business and you're saying, hey, trust me, this 24, 25, 26-year-old, with your money, with the most critical part, one of the most critical parts of your business. It's not an easy sell, right? They're like, they look at you crazy. So we were really thinking what to do. And I remember we were both kind of stressing, and again, it's just kind of the mindset. I was like, all we can do is try, right? I'm not going to argue, but let's think of what we can do. And funny enough, SVB, I don't know if you remember when SVB crashed.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The news broke. I'll never forget it. The news breaks Friday morning. And we're sitting there, we're working, and we just see SVB, the whole thing going down. And we got a little concerned because our money, the rails we were using to move and distribute payroll, was built on top of Evolve Bank. And we were also using Mercury as an operating account, which at the time was using Evolve Bank. So you understand how these, when one bank falls, it's a domino effect.
Cascade,
right?
yeah.
So Twitter went crazy, right? There was like a rush to SVB for everyone to pull their money. So I remember we were sitting there and we're like, what do we do? And we're like, okay, let's just move at least like 3 or 4 months of payroll to, one of the biggest institutions you can, some Chase or Bank of America. And I literally run outside because we're down here in Wall Street, and I run outside and I run to the literally there's a Chase Bank 2 doors down. And
I guess that's
run
the
in there.
luxury of being in New York, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, I need to open up a business account now. And the guy's looking at me and he's like, oh, I got 5 people in front of you. And I was like, dude, they're gonna deposit $20K. I'm depositing 5 times that, 20 times that, whatever it is. I just told him some number. I made it up. I was like, just get me in the door. Let me open my account. Let us transfer the funds out because we want to get paid. We want to make sure we can at least pay our team, right? In case the banks collapse, right? Even if, diversify the risk a little bit. So I remember they kicked me out. I ran across the street, Bank of America teller, same thing. And I'm like, dude, I was like, I was so angry. I was like, forget these guys. They're only going to give you 10,000. I'm giving you way more. And my cousin actually works.
Who's this lunatic?
Yeah, I was like, forget this guy. I was like, yeah, take my money. I was like, why do I have to beg you to take so much money?
It's like a movie scene. The guy behind's like, what the heck, man?
Yeah. And I was like almost yelling at these guys, and I was like, you know what? My cousin, he actually works. He runs like the whole maintenance at the Bank of America building here in Bryant Park. And I call him. I'm like, yo, Ismail, can you get me a meeting? I can't get a meeting. I cannot open up an account. I need it right now. And he's like, how much do you want to move? And I told him, and he was like, oh, okay. So he's like, I'll call you back. So he like runs and finds someone. He's like, can you get here in 20 minutes? I was like, I'm there in 5. So me and KP run out the building, jump on the train, send it up to Bryant Park. We run inside the, Bank of America headquarter building, and we're met with one of the business reps, and they sit us down and we create our account, whatever the case was. And at the end of the process, she says, do you guys want to do payroll? And we look at each other. We're like, Bank of America offers payroll to their businesses that they service? How do we not know this? So we look confused. We're like, no, we're good. So we went home, and we're thinking the whole time, what they do payroll? So we looked it up. We realized that they don't do payroll. They actually just refer you out to QuickBooks and ADP. That's when we were like, why are they not offering payroll? That would have been the easiest sell ever. I'm a brand new business, right? You're catching me at inception. Why would they not offer me payroll? So that was kind of like the light bulb moment for us, where we're like, wait a minute, right? This seems a lot like this is a no-brainer, right? And so a couple months go by, and we're, kind of like thinking through the idea. And then after months of like iteration, we're like, oh, this is perfect, right? We can leverage other people's trust. We already built the payroll system. We own the technology. Why don't we allow people to build on top of us? Use our APIs. We didn't have APIs at the time, but APIs that we would build. Use our product, white label it as their own, and they can go sell it. These banks can go sell it to all the businesses. Because what do you do as a business the second you get your EIN letter? You literally walk to the bank and you open up a business account, right? And then weeks later, you'll get mail from ADP and QuickBooks and all these other guys to do payroll through them. But if you're catching that business at inception, it's the easiest sell, especially when you're new, because you're not doing difficult payroll. You're like, I just need to pay myself or like one other guy. So we started iterating with it, and then we started speaking to investors, and no, this won't work. It's not a good idea. We're like, why? It's not a good idea. We literally were not getting responses. It's just not a good idea. And we're like, what is going on? And then like 3 months after that, after we started speaking to investors, Gusto announces a partnership with JP to launch Chase Payroll for all their business entities. Wow. I remember the email, like I remember seeing that notification, that news. And all of a sudden now when we speak to investors, oh, this is a good idea. Maybe it'll work. And we're like, dude, we told you this months ago and you were like telling us no, but now that the big guy wants to do it, it's a good idea all of a sudden.
It's less risky now.
Right? I mean, I don't want to speak ill, but,
Yeah.
Make a bet, right? That's the whole point of your
job.
let's
put it this way. Your value went up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No, that's very interesting in terms of like, faced with such a massive challenge, a couple of them, right? And then you have to kind of, account for new market conditions when Silicon Valley Bank, and it actually wasn't just them. It wasn't just Evolve. There was like Synapse, I think, fell, and a couple of others. So there's like a lot of the chirages, and, what I guess people don't know is like in the background, you have like these multi-banks that are like supporting smaller banks that are supporting smaller banks. Yep. And so it's literally like kind of like it's like a pyramid scheme. I kid you. Well, I wouldn't say it's a pyramid scheme, but it's very like confusing. And I would say the accounting around it is not transparent as it should be, and it's not clearly as accounted as it should be. So I literally remember when I was looking into Synapse when they collapsed, and this was like I think in 2023, so last year, a year and a half ago. And literally like a bank lost like I don't remember the exact number. I don't remember if it was like 20 billion or 20 I don't want to like say something that I can't remember, but it was a lot of money. And literally they couldn't find where the money was.
Yep.
And so other banks had to stop running their services. Other fintech solutions had to stop, and then all the people that they were servicing had were shut out from their money. So it's like this happens. People don't know the frequency of it, and they don't know the inefficiencies as well as someone who's like deep in the trenches. And so it's kind of interesting that you found your way to realizing, hey, like, okay, maybe just focus on payroll, right? And a direct line to the bank is like a easier path, right?
Yeah.
You're cutting out all these like.
It's a more difficult path.
It's a longer
but it
path.
was a lot less risk, right? Because you're not dealing with a vendor who's just being a
Built on
middleman,
top,
right? You're going
right.
directly to the source,
Right, and you also get their distribution channels, right? No, that's interesting. So let's fast forward a little bit. So now you're working with these banks. When does like did Rollfi get acquired? Is that what happened?
We did.
Okay,
yes.
so walk us through like how from where you were to getting acquired, what that process was like, and what was kind of the decision making that you had to go through when that like you had to sign that dotted line of like, hey, we're actually going to relinquish like our well, I don't know the term deals, but like in general, like what was that process like of being acquired for you?
New, right? Scary too. Because when it's your first time, you're not sure what's standard, what's not. Is someone really trying to get the better of you? Is this a good deal, right? And basically, when we ended up, really deciding to go full on the pivot. And one thing I do want to note here that was part of our mindset was, again, like, we loved the idea of crypto payroll, but honestly, dude, we just want to build a good, sustainable business. It wasn't, it wasn't like, hey, this is my absolute love and passion, and I'm gonna die on this hill.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, no. Like, we understand there's a cliff at the edge of the end of this road if we keep going down here, and we need to do something else, right? And so when we ended up deciding to do the full pivot, we got a couple of initial customers that were friendlies, and they're like vertical SaaS companies, and they're like, okay, we'll try you guys out, right? So we spent the next 6 months developing all those APIs that we wanted and kind of making our product white label enabled, right? So what I mean by that is just allowing us to change the color, logo, domain, right, for those businesses, right? And so we started doing that, getting a couple customers and growing, and obviously raising money was difficult at this time because the markets were not looking great. All VCs were kind of just sitting on their hands. So it was like, okay, we need to scale, but money's tight. So what do we do? So the only thing you can do at this point is keep pushing, right? Get more customers, get money in the door, prove your concept more to where VCs can't just sit on their hands on the deal. They gotta jump in. And so we got like 3 or 4 customers. And funny enough, very, very early days when we were doing the pivot initially, there was one company particularly who was like, hey, why don't you come build for us, right? And we told him our situation. And he's like, oh, I'll come to Soho House. Like, let's talk about it. And so one thing me and KP are really good at is reading people, right? It's like one of us, if not both of us, will smell it, right? We're like, yeah, I see what I see what you're trying to do. So we end up going meet this guy, and he's trying to like, big bro us. He's like, oh, don't worry, my company's killing it. My investors love me. If I need to throw you guys a check, I can write you a check straight from my account. No, you can't. You can't just write other investor money into other businesses, invest like that. So we end up leaving the meeting, and we're like, this guy's fishy. Like, he's trying to do something. And we were transparent with him with, like, runway and all of that stuff. And so for the next 2, we like send him our contract. We draft it up. We send it to him. We're like, hey, be a customer. And he's like, oh, come to my office. So he comes to his office, and he's like, don't even worry about other customers. Just do mine. We're gonna kill it. We're gonna make you so much money. And we know what he's doing, right? He's trying to feed us, and drag us, right? And he takes like 3 months to get us red lines. But in that time, we were getting other customers, right? We're not gonna put all of our chips on this random person, right? So we were getting other customers, which he didn't know about. And in the contract, he puts, if you guys go bankrupt we own all your IP for free. And you have to work to transfer everything back over to us at no pay. Right? So obviously he knew our situation. He was trying to bleed us out as long as he can, then sign the contract with predatory terms. But again, we told him, we're like, dude, no. We'd rather die than sign this contract.
Mm-hmm. Right?
And it was the funniest thing because KP bullied this kid on the call. And the kid was so red. He was so angry. He's like, what do you mean? And we're like, no. We're not signing this. This is a dumb deal because your incentives are completely misaligned. You have every incentive to make sure we die.
It's like complete indentured servitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like why you lose by making us money, right? And so we were like, we'd rather die than sign. Like we'd rather let the business. I'll go home. All these steak dinners with these investors and all this. This is. I don't care about it. This is nice, man. I'm eating ramen at McDonald's. That's what I like. I don't care about these steak dinners, right? I don't care about this life. It's meaningless, man. I enjoy my life already. I don't need this. And so, like, we've been poor. We joke around. We're like, you're scared of being broke. I'm not. Like, that's default for us, right? Like, we've been broke our entire life. That's not new for you. You grew up with a silver spoon. You grew up on the Upper West Side. You know, you lived in the Hamptons. We didn't do that. We didn't do that. So being broke is default. That's fine. I'll go back. Let's go. I'll eat more ramen, right? And alhamdulillah, we started getting more and more customers, and eventually we're like, all right, we have to figure something out. We got to get money in the door. So basically, long story short, KP gets connected with the company who acquired us now, Priority Commerce, with the CEO. And we end up, he's like, hey, come meet us. So we go there, and I remember we sat down in his office, and he goes, go ahead, explain to me like what you're doing. So we started telling him like our whole thesis. And we're about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes in the explanation. And he goes, I got it. And then proceeds to tell us our exact thought process and roadmap for the next 2 years with a 2-minute conversation. By the way, this is layers on layers of type of business, right? We're like white labeling our product. So it's us, and then it's a bank, and then it's us selling to a customer who then sells to another customer, right? Like there's so many layers to this, so much complexity, and he understood it within 2 minutes and then just read everything back to us. And that was the first time we're like, oh shoot, this guy's legit. This guy's legit. Like he knows like what he's doing, obviously. Super nice guy. And yeah, we ended up, he's like, why don't you just, use our like payment rails? We have everything for you. So we're like, okay, like we can look into it. So I started talking with their team, and we got like a good repertoire of each other and really liked it. And eventually he's like, you know what? I want to acquire you guys. So we're like, okay. So that was really a crazy moment because that all sparked right after I got married. Like that conversation became really weird. Like the day I joke about this, the day I got married, the day after I should say, was the brokest I've ever been in my adult life. I was so over leveraged, not paying ourselves for an extended period of time, and living in the city is not an easy task. So I remember I literally like everything I had was like spent on wedding prep and everything like that, and then getting the apartment. And subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, it worked out, and the conversation started to pick up speed after that. And then 6 months later down the road, we eventually ended up signing the docs. It was scary because, like I said before, he was so smart. When we got the docs, our lawyer was like, looks clean. And we're like, no, check again. Like, there's no way, right? And he's like, looks clean. And not that he gave off bad vibes, but it was just like
you want to double check,
how
right?
are we this lucky?
Yeah.
Right? Like, subhanAllah, like, how is this?
There's value in what you created. That's the thing, right? You just had a very bad experience the first time around, right? Yeah. And plus, this is like, there's a lot of this conversation that we've had today. It's always reminds me, like, whatever's written for you is written. Like, if you have like true belief in that, like, dude, like no one can do anything to you in any capacity. It'll come to you if it's meant for you, and if it wasn't, oh, okay, that's probably what's best. Like, it's you actually, like, this is gonna stay with me for a very long time. What you said today, which is like, we've been broke before. I was like, yeah, that's right. Like, you know, like,
well, there's a
value in being comfortable with whatever you have. And, you know, I mean, I'm a firm believer that you should spend the money that you have. What's the point if you don't? Within means, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, at the same time, like, you should be comfortable with wherever you have.
Well, I think it's a lot of it is don't get so attached to the money being as your sense of comfort, right? Like, I mean, I think it's a very nomadic saying of like the Arab Bedouin tribes, saying like, yes, we're very luxurious lifestyle now, but my grandfather, we lived, all we had was camels and the milk from camels, and that was it. And then there's also a level of like wealth doesn't last for many generations. And so they talk about my children will have these fancy cars and things like that, and the generation after that. But the generation after that will go back to what we once had. Yep. And I think there is a sense of not getting so attached to the dunya as your sense of, like, that is your life. Like, yes, inshallah, may Allah increase you in wealth and barakah and all these things. But all of that comes from Allah. Allah is al-Razak. He is the provider, right? All of it is written for you. So staying connected to Allah is the core principle of all of this, that what He provides in front of you or how He shelters you, all of those things is not coming from that customer. It's all coming from Allah. All those can shut doors, but you only need one door to be open, and Allah can open that door.
Yep.
Hakim, this has been an incredible conversation, an incredible journey to hear, going from a college student working on vending machines, eating ramen noodles way back in the day, to kind of just believing in the plan that Allah has written for you and trusting yourself. And I think that's something that we can all do regardless of where you are in your journey, even post-acquisition. I'm sure you kind of go through these thoughts like, what's next, right? And I think it's ultimately comes down into trusting Allah and trusting yourself and the abilities that you've have in front of you. Do you have any questions to wrap up? If not, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to touch on the tawakkul, right? Like how important it is.
Yeah.
Being honest and truthful in your dealings and making sure your intention's correct, right? And it's funny to think about because I always tell people, because like I didn't get too deep into the details. Like it gets a lot worse than what I've led on at some moments, and it was very, very extremely nervy. And I remember thinking, how the heck am I going to get out of this? Like, how is this going to work out? I'm getting married in a month and a half, 2 months, and I have negative balance, and I have this expense coming up. And I was like, you know what? The hadith is like, you walk towards Allah, He'll come to you, right? So I was like, if I put my faith in Allah, Allah's not going to abandon me, right? So it was like one thing that's so important is like setting your intention as pure, right? And so one thing, honestly, funny enough, coming on the podcast was that I want to come do this, right? Because I don't want my intention to be, oh, look at me, I want to try to be beneficial, right? And you guys are, fellow Muslim brothers, and I want to like support you guys in what you're building and, be helpful where I can, inshallah. So, thank you guys, really appreciate, you having me, and, hopefully I did
No, you did wonderful.
Right.
And we appreciate you making the time to come up and meet with us and share your story. And I think it's one of those things that I think whenever we feel like people want to hear our stories, we feel like we don't have much to share, but then on the receiving end, man, people are taking notes. Like there's times where I'm like, why does this college student want to hear me talk? Like literally I'm still figuring it out. But the fact that you know what to do even one step ahead of you or one step more than someone else, that can make a world of difference, right? And I mean, our siblings, right? Like your older brother, you kind of mentioned, like he didn't really have that one other person ahead of him to tell him what's ahead, right? I mean, even look at us as an ummah. Like, we have Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and so many of the companions who have gone through so much of life's lessons and journeys that we still resonate with to this day, even 1,000 years after, right? They weren't thinking about startup life or whatever, but the derivative, the most basic form of that struggle is something that we can all relate with. And I think it's good to highlight those things and share those stories. And that's kind of why, we try to do what we're trying to do. And hearing your story is very, extremely beneficial for all of us to hear. So with that, Hakim Issa, co-founder of Rollfi, thank you so much for joining us at the Caravan Podcast.
Thank you. Assalamu
alaikum wa rahmatullah.